reactions to week 18 of the 2024-25 NFL season. Starting with Saturday football, Browns at Ravens. The Ravens, up until like the end of the third quarter, were up like 21-3. Browns made a little bit of a mini comeback to make the score 21-10. Then the Ravens proceeded to whip their ass, and the final score ended up being like 35 to 10 or something like that. It was an absolute beatdown. The last four games, the Ravens have been very impressive going into the playoffs, and they're dangerous. Do I trust Lamar in the playoffs? Not necessarily, but the way the Ravens are playing right now, if they keep playing like this, they have a chance to go all the way. And Lamar Jackson looks like he's definitely going to win MVP, especially after the last two games of Josh Allen. Not playing terrible, but not playing great either. And Lamar Jackson's just, I think he's had like 40 plus touchdowns and less than like 10 interceptions or something like that. It's an insane number, but he definitely looks like he's going to win MVP. Bengals at Steelers. This game was a close game. Bengals ended up beating the Steelers 19-17. If he would have told me that the Bengals would have only scored 19 against the Steelers, I would have thought the Steelers would have won. But the Steelers' offense didn't do their part, honestly. Russell Wilson played anemic again, and just terrible situational football late in the game. He ran for the first down, and instead of getting out of bounds, he slid inbounds, basically. I think he dived, actually, which, of course, with less than a minute left is very, very crucial, especially with only one timeout left, and that really cost them. So ultimately, the Steelers' defense stepped up. They did everything in their power to win the game, but the offense just couldn't do their part. Sunday football, Texans at Titans. Texans beat the Titans 23-14. The Texans were not playing C.J. Stroud. Not that it mattered because they still beat the Titans 23-14. And for the Titans, the Texans, for the most part, they've been falling apart. I just don't know if I trust them. Right now, they're not playing well enough at all. But they did. I got to give credit to them. They did win this game without C.J. Stroud. And for the Titans, I don't know if I necessarily get rid of Will Levis yet. I don't know if I necessarily give up on him yet. And I'm not just saying that because I want the Giants to get Shedeur Sanders, but yeah, honestly, the Titans they lost the game and they got themselves the number one pick. Maybe the Giants trade to number one or trade up to number one, but I don't, like I said, I don't know if I'd necessarily give up on Will Levis yet. He's only in his second year, and they do need a few more pieces around him, but we'll see. Jaguars at Colts. The Jaguars ended up beating the Colts 23-16. As the Jaguars now have the number 5 pick in the draft, and the Colts they lost the last two games, really cost themselves the playoffs, especially after they lost to the Giants, who at the time were the worst or was the worst team in the league, at least record wise. But the Colts, yeah, they just the last two games they've been playing like shit, not good enough at all. They need a lot of help in the offseason. Again, I'm not giving up on Anthony Richardson. I still feel like he has a lot of talent, but they need to build something because there's just too many holes on this team, and they need to fill them. That sounded sexual, but I promise it's not. And for the Jaguars, I still feel like Trevor Lawrence is that guy. Like he can be that guy. He just hasn't had stability at the head coaching position or just coaching position in general. Urban Meyer was an absolute dumpster fire of a head coach. And I liked Doug Peterson. I just feel like he lost a bit of the locker room and also refused to, for the second time in his career, basically, refused to fire Press Taylor, who fans were hoping that he would fire, but he didn't. I just don't understand why the Jaguars kept Trent Baalke. To me, that sounds ridiculous, but again, I still feel like Trevor Lawrence can definitely be that guy, be a superstar quarterback in the league for the Jaguars, but he just needs stability at the coaching position and also just a few more pieces on the team, not just offensively, but defensively also, like a defensive tackle. Luckily for them, this is a very deep defensive tackle draft, along with running back and middle linebacker and pretty much slot corner. There's not really that many outside corner positions. Luckily for them, they do get a top 5 pick, so they can get either a Mason Graham at defensive tackle or a Will Johnson at cornerback, but we'll see. Bills at Patriots. The Patriots beat the Bills 23-16. Joe Milton had himself a day. The backup quarterback for the Patriots. And the Bills, they just didn't play this game. They rested their starters. And yeah, they rested their starters. Mitch Trubisky was playing at quarterback, and you can only imagine how that went. Not too well. It wasn't terrible, but it wasn't good either. It was below average, I think, but it was a good win for the Patriots. Well, not so much, because even though they won, they really lost because they had the number 1 pick, but now they no longer do, because they had the 4th pick now after winning, and I think that's one of the reasons why Gerard Mayo got fired, and now he looks like he's going to be replaced by Mike Vrabel, so another Patriots former linebacker. For the Bills, they're very dangerous in the playoffs, but we'll see what happens, you know. Josh Allen plays like he had up until like the last 2-3 weeks. He didn't play. He hasn't played terrible, but he hasn't played like he did against Detroit, where he was just. Dude was a freaking alien, and dude has the capability to be just to go nuclear on any defense. But we'll just have to wait and see from the Bills. Although I do trust him more than I trust Lamar in the playoffs. Bears beat the Packers for the first time since 2018, 24-22. Packers, Jordan Love got hurt. Christian Watson looks like he's going to be out for the year. And the Packers, they just don't look great right now at all. Now, they could very well beat the Eagles with the way they played last year in the playoffs, but we'll just have to wait and see. But I don't trust them right now. And for the Bears, pretty good win. Matt Eberflus got fired a while ago, and Thomas Brown had been on a losing streak. The Bears have been on a losing streak since they lost to the Commanders. Since then, they completely fell apart up until like week 18 when they finally got a W. And good for them, you know. They beat it was their pretty much their Super Bowl. They beat the Packers, and good for them. But they need to figure out their head coach position in order to turn the team around. Because right now, I don't know what to think about the Chicago Bears. Panthers at Falcons. The Panthers beat the Falcons 44-38 in overtime. This was a really this game was really a shootout between Michael Penix and Bryce Young. Bryce Young has really come a long way since he got the starting job back from Andy Dalton, and Michael Penix looks like the future for the Falcons. So this should definitely be a very good rivalry for many years to come in the NFC South. But Falcons, honestly, they need to fix their defense because this wasn't the only game where they gave up that many points. They got blown out by the Broncos, and yeah, they just need to fix their defense if they want to really compete in the NFC. Which offensively, they definitely have the talent to do so. Saints at Buccaneers. Buccaneers beat the Saints 27-19. Baker Mayfield has been very, very good this year. The last 2 years, he's been great. Baker's been baking the last 2 years, and he definitely looks like he resurrected his career. It's weird because up until like Bryce Young, who I think has a bright future, but up until like then, the Sam Darnold and Baker Mayfield, the last two Panthers quarterbacks with Carolina, have looked like shit. At least Baker had. Sam Darnold wasn't too terrible. He was decent. He wasn't great, but he was decent in Carolina. They started this. I remember them starting the season off like 4-2 with him as their starting quarterback, but with Baker Mayfield, it never worked out. But Baker's found a new home in Tampa Bay, and he's been balling since. But Buccaneers with the win, they clinched the division, and the Saints, they got a lot of problems. First and foremost, in the offseason, they got to figure out their cap situation because it's like negative $100 million, which I didn't even know was possible, to be honest with you. How the fuck do you go to negative $100 million in cap? That makes like no sense to me, but they got to fix that situation. And overall, they just got to get rid of their veterans, trade them away, cut them, and keep their young guys like Chris Olave and Rashid Shaheed, and Talise Fuaga on offense, and on defense, guys like maybe re-sign Paulson Adebo, I don't know, but at least keep Kool-Aid McKinstry and yeah, that's about it. Brian Breesy maybe, but they just need to go with these young guys and pretty much go through a complete rebuild, which the Saints, for whatever reason, have continued to refuse to do the last couple of years, just restructuring contracts and costing themselves a lot of money in cap space. Commanders at Cowboys. Cowboys were winning this game up until like the fourth quarter, like the last minute of the game. The Commanders won this game even without Jaden Daniels. He got hurt. I think then he was out for the rest of the game. He'll be back for the playoffs against the Buccaneers, but the Cowboys, they battled, but they just couldn't get the W, and that could get Mike McCarthy fired. Although I don't know what the Cowboys are going to do because they got a lot of problems, honestly. DeMarcus Lawrence is set to be a free agent this offseason, and they're going to need to re-sign Micah Parsons because, or at least trade him away. I don't know what they're going to do with him because he's set to become a free agent in 2026, which is not this year but next year. And yeah, they just got a couple things to figure out. They got a high enough draft pick, in the early 10s, I think, early to mid 10s, to be able to draft somebody like an Ashton Jeanty, but who they need because they need a running back, especially with Rico Dowdle set to be a free agent. Not that he was their starting back. He's more of a second option, but he's set to be a free agent, and they just need a running back and a lot of other positions, along with the right guard because Zach Martin is potentially going to retire in the offseason, but we'll see. For the Commanders, Jaden Daniels he's rookie of the year. Dude's been balling out, and honestly, the Commanders are definitely dangerous because of Jaden Daniels. Anytime you have a quarterback, it definitely helps. It makes you that much more dangerous, which is why the Bengals, if they made the playoffs, would have been very dangerous, but they didn't because they didn't control their own fate. And that's why ultimately I said that they weren't. I don't know if I said this out loud, but I said that, or I was thinking that the Bengals were not going to make the playoffs because, again, they did not control their own fate. They needed to win out, and they needed the Broncos to pretty much lose out. And they weren't going to lose to the Chiefs, and they did not. But I'll get to that game in a little bit. At Eagles, the Eagles beat the Giants 20-13 with Tanner McKee at quarterback. You can argue he's the best quarterback of Stanford since Andrew Luck, basically. At least he's been playing like it. But the Giants, they're poverty. They got the third pick in the draft, which could come back to bite them because I don't know what Tennessee and Cleveland are going to do. But they pretty much cost themselves the number one pick with beating the Colts last week. But good news is they still locked up a number 3 overall pick, so they could very easily trade up with either the Titans or the Browns to draft somebody like a Shedeur Sanders. But we'll see. And for the Eagles, even though they didn't play their starters, unfortunately, because Saquon had the chance to break the record set by Eric Dickerson for most rushing yards in a season, over 2,000, and which is unfortunate because I don't know, that might ultimately come back to bite them. We'll see. That might give them bad juju, but we'll see. But the Eagles, they're still a very dangerous team. I don't know if I necessarily trust Nick Sirianni, but the Eagles are elite. Most definitely. Especially if Jalen Hurts could stay healthy, which is another thing that could ultimately hurt them, is Jalen Hurts' injury status right now. I think he got concussed the last game. It might have been a more serious injury, but we'll just have to wait and see. Dolphins at Jets. The Jets beat the Dolphins 32-20. The Dolphins were not playing Tua again, and after losing the game, Tyreek Hill wants out apparently. And for the Jets, after a disappointing season, they did win this game in New York, their final home game and their final regular season game of the season, and their future's up in might have gone up in smoke because we don't know what Aaron Rodgers wants to do with his future, if he even wants to have a future in the NFL. Wouldn't it be funny if he went to like the Vikings, or like the Vikings, like his predecessor in Green Bay, Brett Favre did, after pretty much I think he said that he wouldn't. Wouldn't that just be ironic, honestly? But yeah, Devontae Adams is going to have to leave also. Probably will leave for another team. I still think that he's going to play because he still looks like he's got it. Maybe not like he did once before, but he's still a very productive player. Not to mention, they don't want to ruin it with Garrett Wilson, because if they keep those two guys, Aaron Rodgers and Devontae Adams, Garrett Wilson, I think he said that if those two guys stayed, that he wanted out. So I don't think they're going to make that mistake. Chiefs at Broncos. Chiefs were resting their starters, but it didn't matter. It did not matter because despite the Chiefs getting blown out 38-0 in Denver, people still picked the Chiefs to win this game, which I found ridiculous, honestly, and it showed in this game. As the Chiefs and Carson Wentz, who apparently Nick Wright, who's got some outlandish takes, said that Carson Wentz was the best backup in the league. Yeah, okay, buddy. When is the last time Carson Wentz played a meaningful game? All right. The last time that happened was when Carson Wentz was with the Commanders and he played like shit against the Browns, and that was the game where after the game, Ron Rivera basically said that he didn't know that if they lost, they would have gotten eliminated from the playoffs, which ultimately got him fired. But but credit to the Broncos, they destroyed they just blew up the Chiefs, and they're in the playoffs now. I mean, granted, it's against the Bills, and I don't know if I necessarily like their chances against the Bills. The Bills are a very, very good team, and I still feel like the Broncos need a couple more pieces to truly compete, especially offensively. They need a tight end and a few more weapons, along with a few more players on defense. But we'll see what happens in Buffalo. But congratulations to the Broncos making the playoffs. And the Bengals, they were crying because they didn't make it. Sucks to suck, you know. It's honestly their own fault. Defense should have played like they had the last few games. And if they had, they would have gotten a few more wins and they would have been in the playoffs and wouldn't have had to rely on the Broncos to lose. And ultimately their rival, the Chiefs, to beat the Broncos. But I'm just saying. At Raiders, the Raiders beat the Chargers beat the Raiders 34-20. Aiden O'Connell was still playing for the Raiders. Brock Bowers definitely had a very good season. He's not going to win Rookie of the Year because Jaden Daniels is, but he still had a very good year. Broke the record for most receiving yards in a season. And the Chargers, they head into the playoffs on a great note, especially with Jim Harbaugh as their head coach, who completely turned the franchise around, who already had a lot of talent. They lost a lot of players on offense, but which is why I think that the Chargers still need a couple more weapons on offense in order to really compete against the likes of of teams like the Chiefs and the Ravens and the Bills. But they have a very, very high chance of beating the Texans next week, so we'll see. because the Texans got a lot of problems, especially on the offensive line, so they could definitely win that game. 49ers at Cardinals. Cardinals blew up the 49ers 47-24. Brock Purdy did not play, and in the offseason, they're going to have to figure out what they're going to do with him, if they're going to re-sign him or if they're going to draft a quarterback in like the second or third round. But for the Cardinals, it's been an up and down season for them. Their defense has a lot of holes. Offense is looking pretty good. They have a bright future. I don't know if Kyler Murray's in their future, but they got some weapons on offense for the future. They just really need to fix that defense, though, in order to truly compete. But it was a very good game for them. They destroyed the 49ers, and even though they're not going to make the playoffs, it was still a very good game for them. Seahawks at Rams. Seahawks beat the Rams 30-25. Rams weren't playing their starters. They were resting them. The Seahawks, even though they missed the playoffs, it was still a very good game for them. Geno Smith had some contract incentives that he ultimately ended up getting. I don't know if I don't know if he's the future for the Seahawks. They might need to think about getting a different quarterback, but it was a very good game for the Seahawks and for the Rams. This game didn't really mean anything to them because even though they lost, they got the 4 seed, which is not. I don't know if it's necessarily the best option for them because they play the Vikings next week, but we'll see. And finally, Sunday Night Football. That was Sunday afternoon football. Sorry, apparently I can't talk. But Sunday Night Football, Vikings at Lions. Lions destroyed the Vikings 31-9. The defense just put on a clinic, which is very surprising considering how many players are on injured reserve for the Lions on defense. They got like 12 guys on injured reserve. Most of their guys probably aren't going to be able to get healthy enough until at least the Super Bowl. We'll see if the Lions make it that far. But if they continue to play very good defense like they did in this game, they got a high chance of doing so. But with the win, they got the home field advantage and a bye, so they don't have to play wild card weekend. But for the Vikings, I've said this before and I'll say it again. As good a season as Sam Darnold is having, I don't think that he's the future for the Vikings. There's a reason why they drafted J.J. McCarthy. And, I just ultimately think that, well, obviously J.J. McCarthy is going to be the future for the Vikings. But Sam Darnold, I'd say they either let him go or franchise tag him, but we'll see. But they head into Los Angeles, so they could win, but we'll see. But it was definitely I don't know if it was a bad loss, but still, the offense just did not show up in the game, and they ultimately lost. The offense was shut down. Credit to the Lions defense, but we'll see how they do in the playoffs. Ultimately, I think the Chiefs should be the favorites because they're obviously the 2-time defending champs, and we'll see if they can three-peat. But either way, it was an incredible Week 18, and we'll see what happens wildcard weekend and the rest of the playoffs. All right, I'll catch y'all on my next video. Deuces.